Hi all, welcome to the Vector Software Testing Symposium. My name is Yogesh Rasal and today I'm going to present a session around the software development topic including the healthcare use case. So today in this session we will be seeing what is software development or what is SDLC overall, what are its phases, what are the SDLC models that we can apply while developing any software application. Then we will see traditional waterfall model as well as modern agile model to develop software application, and then followed by we will develop what are the challenges to build an healthcare application, how we can resolve it, and what are the additional factors that we might need to consider for building an healthcare application. Here is the agenda for today's discussion, where we will be covering mainly software development lifecycle and its phases, followed by SDLC models, which model that we can follow. And post that we'll look at the most famous model which are getting used. One of them is waterfall model. Second one is the agile model. And we will also see SDLC for healthcare use cases. Whenever we needed to build any healthcare application, what are the additional factors that we might need to consider? Moving to next point about SDLC and its phases. So SDLC is a framework that describes the activities performed at each stage of a software development project. So it is very important that whenever we are doing any project or any activity, we usually think about any framework or structure. If it is in front of us, then it is very easy to achieve the task in a better fashion, what we wanted to achieve or what we wanted to complete. So in the same fashion, whenever we wanted to develop a software application, we definitely need to have some framework in front of us, and we can follow that, which help us to make sure that we are completing a software development or the building software application within specified time and the budget, and also meeting all the customer expectations from that particular software application. When it comes to phases, so there are 6 different phases that I have noted down here are a very important phases to accomplish any software application. One of first step or first phase is basically planning and requirement analysis, where in this phase mostly senior members get involved, customer gets involved, where we understand what are exactly the requirement from this software application, and the input is basically having discussion with the stakeholders, understanding what exactly is the requirement, and post that the output gets generated from this phase, and that is nothing but the BRD, kind of business requirement document. And that document is input for our next step, which is defining requirements, where considering the business requirements which has been analyzed by the team, we document all the detailed requirement, including what are the functionality features that we need to develop, and what are the things that we need to test out, and basically define what is the acceptance criteria to accept this particular application in the market, or basically it gets accepted by our customer. So output of this particular phase, that is second phase, is SRS, that is software requirement specification document, and which is then input for our next phase, that is designing the software, where referring to SRS document, our design team, architecture team considers SRS and create designs like high level design or low level design documents out of it. So it can include theoretical explanation as well as diagrams. So output of this particular phase could be high level design diagram or documents and low level design diagram or documents. Then that becomes the input for our next step, that is for our building or developing a software, which goes to our development team, and then development team will start writing application or the source code by referring to the designs that has been created in the earlier phases. So the output of this particular phase will be a source code, and from that source code, the artifact or deployment artifacts gets created, which will be used for deploying it in further environments. For example, there could be a testing environment and then production environment. Initially, we will be deploying that into testing environment or QA environment, so that our testing team can test it out. And the output of that testing phase is basically a test result. And if at all there are any bugs or issues are there in the software application, then our testing team will report it development team will fix it again, and QA team will again re-verify it. They will do the regression testing and all remaining testing that they needed to complete, and post that once the test results are good, like if there is no bug or the bugs which are acceptable, having low impact on the overall system, and if customer is also okay with that, all stakeholders are okay with that, then we can take a decision, or all stakeholders mutually take a decision to take this build in the production or take this software application in the market. Now, and that state is nothing but it goes to the next phase where that application gets provided to our deployment team. We also call them as, let's say, DevOps team. And then DevOps team will deploy this software application in the production, and post that the maintenance phase also gets started, where we need to provide patches or bug fixes as well as some of the enhancement requested by end customer to continue to support and keep our software application in the running state. So these are the important phases of the software development, and in subsequent slides we will see what are the basically methodologies or what are the models that we can follow or we can consider to basically achieve this SDLC to build our application. Now, what exactly is the need of SDLC models? So it is basically a base or framework to define all project management activities like scheduling, then estimating, and then basically all planning phases. Then it also basically supports us in project tracking as well as control mechanism. This is also a framework to define set of terminologies or important concepts which will be used by the team throughout the software application development activity. So yeah, this SDLC models are nothing but a base for all project management activity, as well as it also increases visibility of the overall project development, so that all the stakeholders should remain on the same pages. So SDLC models, then what are the advantages of choosing an appropriate SDLC model? So there are few advantages which are very important in developing software application. Like because of the SDLC model, there is definitely a development speed gets increased. Then there is confidence, as well as there is product quality. Product quality will be good if we follow the SDLC models. Then there is also improvement in the overall project tracking and control mechanism, and it also helps us in basically maintaining good client relations, because with some structure, with some model in front of us, customer will be, or all the stakeholders will be basically confident about the delivery or the overall progress that we are making. So that model will definitely help us in kind of giving clear visibility to all the stakeholders. There are various types of models that has been defined by various universities or institutes as well as professionals, and some of them have noted over here, which mainly consists of waterfall model, iterative model, spiral model, agile model, V model, and Big Bang model. So in subsequent slides, we'll be mainly focusing and discussing about traditional and most of the time the model which gets used is the waterfall model and the agile model. So we'll discuss about these two models in the subsequent slides. Waterfall model. Now, when we talk about the waterfall model, it is the oldest and most well-known SDLC model. It follows sequential step-by-step execution, like all the phases which we have just seen in the earlier presentation. All 6 phases goes one after the other. So it's not like the complete software application requirements has broken down into multiple phases. It's like all the requirements gets considered for the development, all the functionalities gets developed, and then the software application gets delivered to QA team or testing team. They test all the applications, report bugs, and then the bug fixing activity gets started. So waterfall model basically indicates that whole set of bunch or the features gets considered in one go, and it gets delivered to the next phases one after the another. And which mainly considers that all the requirements are frozen, all the requirements are very clear. So waterfall model's main assumption is that requirements are definitely clear, and that's why whichever system is giving clear requirement or having clear requirement is the right fit for going for the waterfall model. These are some of the strengths which we just talked about, where it is easy to understand. Also, it basically gives some stability because the requirements are frozen and there are no changes or modifications that we entertain in between the release cycle or overall SDLC life cycle. That's why, as the requirements are frozen and all the subsequent phases deliverables are also frozen, it is kind of giving stability or confidence that the project start time and project end time might get finished as per our plan. Also, it is very useful for management for planning purpose as well as staffing purpose and tracking purpose, because everything is clear in the first phase itself. Yeah, so quality is more important aspect in the waterfall model. Now moving to weaknesses about the waterfall model. So sometimes it is very difficult to having all the requirement in front of us, but that's the main part of the waterfall model. So this is one of the weakness. Then all the deliverables are getting frozen initially, so that's why it inhibits the flexibility, where we cannot update or we cannot change the requirement in between. Integration is one big bang at the end, and that's why it is challenging, or sometimes it happens that during the integration phase so many bugs are there, and dev team or development team will be taking long time to fix all those issues. So that might be causing some delay in the overall delivery. That is one weakness. Then definitely the next weakness, and which is very important, is the little opportunity for a customer to preview the system, because customer will be able to see the working software at the end of all the phases and after the entire development of all the features. So here is less opportunity for the customer for the review and giving the feedback and making sure that all the feedback is getting incorporated within less amount of time. When to use waterfall model? Basically, when our requirements are clear, we know in which technology we are going to build the software, or if the software has been already built in one technology or in one platform, and if we wanted to move it to another, then definitely waterfall model is one of the best approach or best model to choose for the development. Agile model believes that every project needs to be handled differently, and the existing methods needs to be tailored to best suit for the project requirements. So agile model is basically not delivering entire software application in one go, breaking down it into multiple features, multiple chunk, and also the time frame, and within that particular time frame keep developing planned features, deliver it to the QA team, test it out, then have a demo for the customer. In that way, customer will get early visibility of the application or the iterations that we have just completed for one of the feature, or maybe multiple features. But not all the features gets developed in one iteration. It gets breaked into multiple features, and there could be iterations of 2 weeks or 1 week, and depending upon the iteration, there is a flexibility to cut down any one of the phase and just move on to the next phase just to accomplish the target. So this is kind of flexibility that we'll be having in agile, and which also gives the flexibility to customer to change the requirement or to update any portion of the requirement if at all required. So considering that agile model has many methodologies or methods implemented, and we can choose any one of the method which best suits for our project requirement, such as there are a few methods like Scrum, then Kanban method, then rapid application development method, then extreme programming method. So these methods are there, and depending also those methods are getting invented depending upon what kind of requirement that best suit for your project development. Yeah, these are some of the strengths that I have mentioned it over here, and we just discussed about it in the earlier, this discussion, where the last point is important, where very little or no planning required, because most of the time small features gets targeted in the iterations, or at least less number of features gets targeted, so that everyone can focus and basically complete the work as early as possible with less planning and design phase, which leads to some of the weaknesses where in the weaknesses of agile model for larger project, it is bit difficult to understand all of them and run through agile model structure. And in the weaknesses section, there is also another point about the design and documentation, where there is always less attention to the design and documentation, because we keep moving on the faster development and finishing and kind of giving demo, but sometimes it is very important to note down these points, and that aspects gets missed or gets less attention in case of agile model, which we will be following for any of our project development. Then it depends heavily on customer interaction. So if customer is not clear, team can be driven in the wrong direction. So as there is a flexibility to change the requirement, because there are chances that in initial phase we will not thought through about all detailed requirement. So there are chances that because of the changing nature of the requirement, team might go in the wrong direction if in the earlier attempts or earlier iteration, if customer is not clear about the requirement. When we think about applying SDLC for any of the healthcare use cases, then nowadays healthcare industry is very dynamic and incorporating all the technologies into their processes, so that they can provide best services to patients as well as efficiency in serving them by following all the required processes. So healthcare application also subject to regulatory policies as well as health compliance requirements. So in that way, by making sure that it's a healthcare application, and also there is social as well as technical part needs to be blend together. There are always challenges to develop quality, suitable and effective healthcare application. So these are some of the challenges where we definitely need to consider the appropriate process to define, as well as to think go for the development activity of the healthcare application. In the design phase, we need to consider many important use cases like PII information. If at all, let's take an example. If at all our application which we are trying to build is application like we wanted to collect health information of a patient, and we are maintaining it on mobile app side as well as on a server side. So in that way, in the design aspect, we need to make sure that the data is in the encrypted fashion, and it is even if it gets leaked, no one is able to decrypt it or able to misuse it. So also some of the requirements which I have seen in the past is like if we are collecting data in, let's say, X country, then there are some country specific rules and regulations which team needs to follow, our application needs to follow. For example, that country, region or country servers should only contain the data of that country, and that country's data or patient's data should not leave the boundary or should not leave basically the country specific regions servers that we have defined. So such cases needs to be considered in the middleware or writing kind of basically our server application. We need to consider what logging mechanism that we should follow, what information we can log, what information we cannot log. Yeah, now the challenges which we have seen just now can be easily resolved using the agile model and any of the methodology that we wanted to follow from the agile model, for example Scrum or Kanban or rapid application development, any depending upon your project need. Now, when it comes to healthcare application, these are some additional factors that we definitely need to consider while developing healthcare solution. One of the important or the first important aspect is the security, where we need to make sure that data security we have considered while building an application. So for example, the earlier use case that I was talking about, where we wanted to build, let's say, an application where we will be collecting a data of the patients, their medically labeled data, and in that case their PII information will be there. So we need to make sure that the files or the data which we are keeping it on a mobile application side, it is also in encrypted fashion, AES-256 encryption methods or maybe any other encryption we might need to apply. And in that way, we can say that the data at rest is also secure. And when the time comes to push that data to a server or in the backend, then we also need to make sure that we are sending it with a secure channel. So we can use HTTPS communication for the same. So in that way, we can assure that data at rest as well as data at transit both are through the secure way. And when again it will come to a backend server, maybe in the AWS S3 bucket or in the database, we need to make sure that AES-256 encryption or any other encryption mechanism has been applied on that data as well, so that if at all any wrong thing happen with that data, then no one will be able to decrypt the data and misuse it. The next important aspect around the security is basically at the time of design as well as deployment, we need to consider the regulatory guideline, the compliances, which either customer has set or any of the stakeholder is expecting that these are the compliances that you or your team needs to follow while developing this particular healthcare application. For example, HIPAA is one of the compliance where if at all we are dealing with, or if at all our application is dealing with US citizens, US patients data, then in that case we need to make sure that the healthcare or customer might set expectation that the team working on this application should follow HIPAA and they should follow all the standard operating procedures comes under the HIPAA. For example, there has to be a shredded printer near the premises or near the team which is working on this healthcare application. For the team members, they need to make sure that they are not sharing the PII information which is allowed for them to look into it with other team members within the same company or maybe outside the company. The additional standard operating procedures could be like there has to be a camera watching the team. So such additional network level operating procedures, as well as even while developing software, there could be SOPs like we should not write any PII information in the log file whenever any request is getting served by the server. So those are few of the standard operating procedures that team might needs to follow. In case of GDPR compliance, if we are dealing with European citizens data, then GDPR compliance comes into a picture. ISO 13485 is the standard or basically guideline to deliver quality medical device, or if at all we are working on medical device or any app which is for the medical purpose, then ISO 13485 defines some standards to basically deliver high quality product or high quality medical device in the market. Similarly, other additional factors are basically performance, reliability, availability of that particular health application. So definitely performance is one of the important factor where that application needs to perform all the time in the same fashion. The reliability, it should not vary the results or the output of output if the input is same for that particular software application. In case of availability, let's say any doctor is treating patient in the operation theater or operating in the operation theater, then in that case, that software has to be available. Let's say that software is providing data to a clinician or to basically a doctor, then that data has to be available all the time. There should not be any delay in looking at the data because doctor might need to take some decisions in the further operation. So availability is very crucial aspects for the healthcare application, and obviously the processes, all the defined processes defined for that particular health application needs to get followed. So these are basically factors that we need to consider while building an healthcare application. Thank you so much for attending this session, and I'm very happy to answer any of the question around the software development topic.